Well, hey everyone, welcome to today's Articulate training webinar. Today we're looking at Articulate localization in Rise 360. Only Rise 360. Nothing, no storyline in this session today. We're just going to focus on Rise. A couple things before we get started. We are recording today's session. I've got a good team of folks helping me out here in the back channel that are here to answer your questions. The only thing we ask is, if best you can, just keep your questions focused on Rise specifically as localization and Rise questions. It'll just help them prioritize their answers. I can tell you they're not going to say no if you ask a storyline question, but it will help them prioritize the answers that are the answers to questions during this specific Rise session. Now, we did a separate storyline session. It's the first time we really did these as separate sessions, which kind of makes sense, though, because there's so much to what you can do with Articulate localization in each app that we thought, okay, well, we'll break these out into separate sessions. So there's a resource page that we'll share with you. It doesn't have the recording yet, but you will get that tomorrow morning when we process the today's session's recording and then add that to the page. I think that is it. We shouldn't see any audio or video problems as we're using in Zoom. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to walk through a couple things you can do that you should think about when you first get started, and that is just some things you can do to customize and set up your localization. So where am I? I am on the dashboard here in Rise 3 in Articulate 360, 360.articulate.com. And what I want to do is just open up my account info. So I'm going to do that by coming over here to the far right corner. We see my profile icon, click account. Now, this assumes that you are an account admin for your 360 teams, so you'll be able to manage the team in your subscription. If you don't have that admin access, then you're not going to see this, but this is really specific to admins. So first off, the manage team, and what this is going to let you do is see who has access to what. So for example, you can see right here, I have access to 360, localization on the account owner, reach, and so on. But like Ellie down here, she has access to 360, but she also has access to localization. I can click Manage Permissions, and maybe I don't want to enable that for her. This is a little different than 360 because localization works off of credits, meaning every time you translate a new course, or every time you add a new language to a course, it's going to use up credits, localization credits. And so if everyone on your team, you have 100 people on your team, 20, and they're all practicing or running through localization, that's very likely that they'll kind of burn through your credits faster than you like. So you may want to restrict who has access to actually localize the course. However, you could still have everyone collaborate on the course the same as you've always done in Rise, right? You could add multiple collaborators, 10 different people, 30, 40, all work on the same course. But when it comes time to actually translate the course, maybe you just put that into the account of one or two of your team members. So I want Ellie to have it, so I'm going to close without saving and not change that, but that's where you can manage your team. And then the next one right below the team is the subscription. Here we can make some changes to localization. So first off, you have this download usage report option. So what that lets you do is really just download a spreadsheet for all the courses that you've translated, all the users, the number of languages that you've used. This gives you everything that you need to know how you're using Articulate localization. But you could download that maybe once a month, or depending on how frequently you're using it. But you could also just look at the dashboard and see what your used credits are, or used translation credits, and then how many you have remaining. And next up, this is something you certainly want to do, and that is your glossary. Manage your glossary. So under the glossary right here, you get, I think by default, you should have an example glossary. At least it used to be there, but I've deleted these 100 times, so I'm not sure if you see it. If you don't see it, then just click the link right here that says download the sample glossary, and that'll give you the example glossary. But what this will do is actually show you the kind of the formula, or the way that you structure these glossaries so you can have specific terms. So let me do this. I'm going to pop one open right here. This is what you get by default. So I'm just showing you the exact same glossary that you would see if you downloaded the template. So what I have here is, I can probably zoom in a little bit to make that easier. Across the top, we have the language code. So this just specifies what words, how the words will be translated into, in this case, English, and then we have ESES, which is Spain Spanish, and then what is that, Danish, and then Japanese. So on that resource, on the back in your account when you're managing, you have this right here for managing the glossary documentation. That'll tell you all the different language codes that you would use, country codes for the languages. So a couple things here. First off, you may have terms, product terms, industry terms, maybe just specific phrases that are unique to your industry or your company, and you don't want them translated. Just drop the same term or phrases across each column. So Articulate 360, that's a product name. Articulate is also a word, so we don't want that translated. So by putting them here in the columns, AI translation will just jump over that. It's not going to make any changes to that. So you can have a lot of control over what gets translated, how it gets translated, or what doesn't get translated. For example, then we start going down here, we have add, and you have the different ways that you want to say add, right? So if there's a specific meaning or intention behind a term, you just drop those translated words into each of the columns. AI is going to skip those or use those as the translated term. Now, the one last thing on the glossary is think about these as like a living document. As you start going through multiple translations, you're going to find your validators or find the people validating your course. They're likely to find, oh, there's a lot of terms I see that we keep changing time after time. We'll make their job easier by getting a list of those terms, adding them to your glossary, and then updating the glossary. So let me show you what that looks like. So I don't need to save right here. But let's say that we added a few new terms to our, in this case, the example glossary. Just come over here, the three dots, and then you can choose update, and then you can replace that with the modified version of that file. Maybe you deleted a term, right? Maybe you had to change something. So you can make those changes and then update the glossary. You can also add multiple glossaries. So this is really huge because it's likely, depending on what your organization does, but you may be publishing courses for a lot of different industries, a lot of different countries, and so having multiple glossaries per client, per country, per industry, or something like that makes a lot of sense. So I'm just going to add a second glossary here real quick. I'll call this Articulate Company. And so for Articulate, we have a glossary that we use, and it has all of our product terms in there. It has words that we use in certain ways that we just either want translated or don't want translated at all. And so I can just choose that file, Articulate Glossary, and open up. So go ahead and add that. So you can have multiple glossaries that you're working from. Now notice how you have to choose one as a default. Doesn't really matter because when you go to publish a Rise or Storyline course, as soon as you publish, when you get to that publish step, that publish window, it's going to ask you which glossary you want. By selecting either of these as the default, it just simply has the default glossary listed as the initial glossary. So if you have multiple glossaries, we'll see this when we publish our Rise course. Double check it, make sure you've selected the right glossary. And you can see I have a different number of terms here. There's 50, and there's a couple different languages in this company glossary. All right, that is it, I think, for us. Let's go ahead and just get started. Let me come back over here to my dashboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work from a Rise course that I got from the content library, the business templates, when to ask your boss for help. So this has real content in it. It's just a course that I added this morning. We're going to use this as our course. Now, there's a couple things you can do with your course before you actually go to that translation process. First is you want to make sure the course has been properly reviewed, which means publishing the course to review and having someone validate, a reviewer, just QA, quality assurance, the course, QC or quality control, to go through everything, make sure everything is correct. You don't want your validators catching functionality type issues or quality issues. You want to make sure that's a normal process that you do, just like you were publishing to your LMS. Get this course perfect, get it reviewed, and then you're going to be ready for localization, for translating the course. But you can also do some other things like making sure that the spelling and grammar are correct. Again, that's something you would automatically do, but if the grammar is off, that's also going to affect the quality of your translation, and then your validators are going to work that much harder. Another thing you can do is make sure that your courses are written in the active voice as much as possible. If you're not really certain, you could just select it. If you have AI Assistant, you could come in and say, rewrite in active voice, right? So we could just do some basic copy editing right here and rewrite the course in the active voice. The more you can keep this, it looks like it's already in the active voice, but the more you can keep that in the active voice, it's just going to be that much easier for AI, the AI translation to know who's doing what the subject is, what they should be doing, or who's doing what to whom, and so on. So active voice, keep the grammar correct, and then finally, watch out for caps. A lot of times we use caps for emphasis, right? Your boss is always busy. Thing is with AI translation, if it sees caps, it thinks that's an acronym. And so if it thinks it's an acronym, it's likely to just skip over it. So you don't want to do that. You can use formatting and things like that, but do not use all caps for emphasis. That's just another one of those to look for. Oh, and then finally, emojis. We do have the option to add emojis to text. A little easier in Rise than it is in Storyline. Remove emojis. They don't all have the same cultural meanings, so it's something you want to watch for as well. So if you see any emojis in your writing, just remove those from your course. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to assume that my course has been reviewed. I've already gone through my normal review QA process. People have reviewed it. It's correct. Everything's in place. Everything's functional. There's no grammar or content issues. And once it's there, we're ready to translate. So to translate it, we're going to come back over here to our dashboard. And if you remember the old ways before Articulate Localization, you would come in here and you would duplicate the course, one for each language. We're not going to work like that anymore. We have a much easier way. So just go down, don't stop on duplicate, come down to translate, and then from here, we're going to specify the languages that we want to translate. The benefit here is that everything that all the languages that we translate in Rise are all included in the same course. So you could have 10, 20 different languages translated, but you only have one Rise file. That's pretty amazing. So we want to specify our source language. It's going to should pick that up by default, but again, maybe someone sent you a course and it was in different language. You want to make sure that the source language is what the course was initially written in, and then for target languages, we're going to specify the course. So we have 87 languages total. Every time I do this webinar, there are new languages. So let's say Spanish. I'll say Spain, and then let's also say Hebrew. So we look at a right to left language, and then let's say German, and then let's do Japanese. Okay. So I'm just specifying a certain number of languages. You can see them right here. If I click the little X, I can remove them. And even if you have to come back later and then add another language, you just do that. It's not a problem. You just add more languages as you go. You may just want to try it in one language just to see how it works, and then you want to add another one. Just keep adding them, and then it'll keep adding those translations to the same one single Rise course. Here's that I meant about the glossary. So by default, it's going to show whichever default glossary you selected. But you're not stuck with that. You can come down and say, I want the Articulate Company glossary, and it has 6 different languages. You can see what's right there. And then we have language formality. So a lot of languages will specify, have that formal or informal voice and tone, the way the pronouns and related words are used. If you know what you're using, if you know you want it more formal or less, you could choose it. Or you could just stay with automatic. Personally, I would stay with automatic the first run, see what it does, and then you could always rerun it in the formal and informal to kind of compare and contrast what that looks like. When you rerun a translation, it's not going to use up your credits. So if I translate this once and then translate it again and I want to try it in more formal, it's still, if I just keep the languages the same, it's going to still just do that without using up any of your translation credits. All right, that's it. That's all we have to do. I'm going to click translate, and things are happening quickly here. So here it goes. Notice off over here, well, we've got some things on easier. Content got easier. I got it. Off to the side, we've got the languages translating. Looks like Hebrew already finished. I always kind of like look at this like a little video game to see which language will finish first. So far, there's no pattern to them. And they're all finished. That's it. That's how fast it was, real time. The Storyline takes a little bit longer because we're uploading multiple versions of the file, but since Rise is all online, it's a lot quicker. We can click through each of these and take a look at each of our languages. So we can see the German, we can see the Hebrew, which automatically moves everything over right to left. That's just amazing, right? The Japanese and the Spanish. Awesome. Okay, so at this point, we have our course translated. What we want to do is get this into review so that we can get the specific languages into the hands of our language validators. So I'm going to click review. And most of this review is going to look similar, but there will be some differences because we are translating. So we have created new items, the first time I've translated this course, and then I have my languages. You don't have to do them all at once. Maybe you just want to publish a couple of them to see how it goes, but again, these are all going to be stacked within the same course, so there's really no harm in doing all or just a couple if those are what you need. So I'll keep all languages right there and publish. So now it's taking each of the courses and the AI translation process is taking place. You can see that down here. German finished first this time. It's already finished. I had like 30 seconds worth of script to go through. I guess that's fast enough. All right, we could click any one of these to go to the specific language. I'll just start with the English, and this is popping open in review, but it's a little bit different review. And that is because we have specific language. So we just see the comments section like in review for the English. However, we start going into each language and notice we have this new tab called translation. And that's telling you the language code right there. Oh, DE. Did I say Danish earlier? It's German. It's German. Sorry. You can see the language code, and then you have the translated text over here on the right and the original text on the left. So what your validator is going to do is they're going to go through here and they're going to look at the course and they're just going to work from this column and make real-time updates to the course. So for example, if I came in here and I don't know German and I started typing, look at that. Automatically it's happening live to your course. They're making edits to the course. They don't have to have an Articulate 360 subscription or license, but when you send the course to them, they have that immediate access and they start to edit the course. Deleting things or cutting them out. It's all happening right there in the course. That is amazing. Now, I can also come in here and click reset, which makes sense because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'll come down and reset that one. So we can see the Hebrew course. And so really, as a Storyline, as a Rise developer right here, I'm just going through, taking a look at the course, making sure things were translated. I'm very likely not a language expert here, so I'm not making decisions based on the content. Maybe you have that, maybe that you are, but most likely you're just looking over the course quickly before you assign the courses to your validators so that they can go through them. Now, as the validators go through, they'll make those changes. They can also use the drop-down menu, and you can see how they can navigate your course. This makes a lot of sense in any course, but I can say Storyline, one of the things that you'll notice is that sometimes courses are locked, so they can use the same menu. So it works exactly the same in Rise and Storyline. In Rise, you may have a compliance mode set where they can't advance until they finish, but the validator just wants to jump forward, so they can jump forward here, but they'll still need to go through all of these and then deliberately mark each one as validated so that signs them off. All right, I'm going to work from the Spanish course, and what I want to do is I'm going to assign a validator for this course, get this in the hands of someone else, a language expert, Spanish language expert, and they'll go through the course and make those changes. So I'll say request review, and I'm going to say David. So this is a user. I can leave a note, please validate this course. If you want to assign a due date, you can do that. I'll put it for Friday, maybe the 14th. And that just basically helps me track, from my dashboard, courses that are when they're due. And then I can send a reminder to my validators as well. I'm going to go ahead and click send request. And that sends an email to my validator. So let me do this. Give me a second here. I'm going to pull open email. Let me see what I have here. I want to pull open the email. There it is. And so what it's saying is, David A has requested your review on when to ask your boss for help. And then there's due date and go to review. So I'm going to click that. It's going to open up my browser. So yeah, here we go. So this is what I'm looking at here is in a different browser. This is what your validator would see. So this is the view of the person you assign to review the course. So notice how the validator won't see the other languages over here on the left. They don't see all of those. Even if you assign them multiple courses, they're going to have different links for each of the languages. And they have a few options here as they go through it. So I can, wait, am I losing control? There we go. Yeah, I can expand and minimize the translation. I can navigate with this drop-down menu. Now, as your validator goes through, right, we looked at this, updates here with new text, it automatically changes what you see on Rise. Now, that would need to be in Spanish. It's obviously not in Spanish, but what I want you to see is that the text changes that they make here are automatically applied to the course. And then what you'll do as the Rise designer, you'll bring those changes back into the source course. And they just continue going through. If they're finished, they mark the validated. Now, one thing, and I'll go to the next lesson, one thing they might do is they might find certain terms that they're translating over and over. So, for example, I'm just going to say, let's say curso, which probably is course, I'm guessing. They could come in here and search for the term, curso, and they can see they can see it throughout the course. They could come in to find and replace and then change that with something else. So they could make, course-wide changes by using the find and replace. But if they do that, this is something you want to hear from them for it and say, hey, let's add that term, let's add the correct term in our glossary. And then I'll update the glossary so that they're not having to make those changes. It just saves them time, and it's something you could easily do by adding to the custom glossary. So you have a find and replace, you have a search for certain words, so you can search that way. There's also the option to filter by imported or unimported. This just means after the validator completes their review, there'll be some changes, but if they haven't been brought back into the source course, you could see what those changes are. I think you'll use these more as the Rise designer than the validators, but when we finish this validation process through from the validator's perspective, I'll show you what that looks like. So they're going through. They can reopen the validation. They can continue going through each lesson. Update new text. Let's go back to the next lesson here. Almost like it's frozen for me. So let's try coming right here, and I'll go to introduction. Maybe my browser, my internet's down, and then I make a new change. I just want to put some changes in here so that we can see what this looks like. And then this is the next one. I'm not seeing an update here. So it looks like it's not, there it's changing. I think there's a little bit of a lag right now. So as I go through this, it looks like I'm having some internet issues. So I'll make a few changes. Okay, so they can mark this validated. If they want to, mark everything validated, if they finish it, they could just do finish review. And that sends me a completion email to let me know that my validator has finished the changes, and then I can go from there. So at this point, the validator would be finished with their translations. I'll just minimize that. And then when I'm back here, I'm just going to go back to my dashboard. Notice how for the translated course, though, real quick, we have that stack. It shows me the 4 languages, so I can see that this is a translated course. It's also nice when you're searching through your courses, you can look for specific courses in Rise that have been translated. So I'm going to pop this open, and notice right here we see the Spanish review has been complete. If I click it, it's telling me that this has now been updated. So I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to go back into my Rise course where I can import those changes directly in the course. So here's my language stack. I'm just going to go ahead and click this to open up the course. And right down here in Spanish, I see that there are 3 changes, 3 updates or changes that my validator made. So I can click the ellipse, and I have a few options. I could relaunch those up into review. So if I look at this in review, I can find those and just take a look at them. So what I might do is just say, let's look at the unimported edits only. So these are the edits that haven't been brought back into the course. I can see this one right here. I can go to the next one. Yeah, it's just not updating. So I think there's certainly something going on with my internet connection, and then I can see the change. So that's just a way that you can view the specific changes without, let's say clear filter, without before you update the course, as a way to just validate that those changes look correct. Maybe you have that language expertise or not. But if you are ready to import them, you can just click the course, say, click the ellipse, and then choose import all of those suggestions. And that's going to update everything in the Spanish course. And that has now been updated with those new text. And that's it. That's how easy. Now you just go through each of the other remaining courses, and then you can assign the validators for each one. But essentially my course, my Rise course, is current with that Spanish version. It's gone through the review, it's gone through the validation, and the changes have been made. Okay, so let's look at now some ways that we can further customize our language-specific courses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into Rise. So we're in the reviewing the course right here. So I'm just going to come back in and open up Rise, and then we can make some edits specifically to each of our languages. So let me come back in here in Rise, select my course, and I'm going to edit these courses. So I'm going to click Edit Course up here in the top right. So Edit Course, and this will take us into the normal Rise editing view that we're used to seeing. Now, this is all one course, right? So that's the big benefit of one of the big benefits of articulate localization is that it's all contained here in a single course. For me to jump into any other languages, I can do that by just clicking up here on the top and then switching to the specific course to make edits. So for example, we could say when I edit the Spanish course, any changes I make in here will affect the Spanish course specifically. So let's talk about media, for example. There's a hierarchy in terms of how these courses are structured. And I'll just come in this first lesson right here. I think we have an image. Yeah. So this image right here is in all of the courses. If I click in the German course, I'm in German. You can see right here we're saying it's letting us know that we're in the German course. So I can make additional changes to the content and then retranslate the course. Or maybe I just want to make changes to specific images. If I make a change to any images or any media here in the English course, or if I add a new block, that's going to cascade down throughout the other courses. So if I wanted to keep this image here for my English course, for example, but I wanted to change specific images for each of the courses, I can do that. So I can just choose Edit Content, and let's just use something with AI. 2 people looking at a computer screen. I guess that's what they were looking at, I think. So then I'll just generate a quick image. I just want to replace something here so you can see what that looks like when it changes. And so we'll see this gets all changed. Yeah, that doesn't matter. That's fine. So I'm going to insert that image. So this image right here now is specific to the German course. If I come back up to English, we'll see that that English course image is there. And then we also see the Hebrew version of the course is still selected. So if you're swapping out media, videos, or images, and you're doing it within the course, that's going to be course language specific to that course. However, if I came in and I replace this image with an image, it's going to replace it for the other courses that haven't been touched. So we'll say 2 people looking at a computer screen in conference room, something a little bit different, right? So just want you to see what this looks like. So we'll just grab a random image here. All right, here we go. Right, so something different. So I'll just insert that. So this is the English course that we're working on, and that's now replaced. If I look at the German course, right, there's the German image specifically that I placed. However, I didn't do that for the other courses, and now I have that image. So if I'm making that global change to something on the English that I haven't specifically changed, say for instance within a language course, that image is going to cascade down. But it's very likely that the media that you have in your course, any videos or images, you want to further personalize those for the language. So if I'm in the Spanish, then I would come in and make that change to the edit image here, and that's going to detach that from that source image, that source course, and then update that for the specific language. Now let's say you want to add another block. So in that case, we're going to come back up to our source course or source version, and let's say we wanted to add maybe just an interactive block in here. So if I add an interactive block or anything, right, any new block, we'll just say let's bring in an accordion. That accordion has now been added to the course, and it's now going to be added to each of the other courses as well. But I need to retranslate the changes. Now, what's really nice here is that Rise is only going to detect any changes you make to the source language after the last time you did the translation. So it allows you to essentially translate the changes without affecting any other portion of the course. So here's how this works. You can see that this has been added to the course. I can choose the drop down. You can see right here it's telling me that one source change has been detected. Update the source translations from the stack. So I could either click the back arrow or just click back to stack right down here, and that will take me back to the stack. And then we have the update translations now. So something that's been changed in the source, we need to update those translations. So what will happen is it's only going to make the changes to the specific areas of the course that was updated. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and just update the translations. So click that and let it do its thing here. So it's going to run through the translations. Again, it's only worrying about what's changed. It's not going to go through the entire course. So you don't have to worry about your validators don't have to go back and validate the entire course. They're only going to be directed to the recent changes that were made. So we'll give that a second. All right, everything is updated. And then let's say we look at the German version of that. And we should see in here, right now it's been completely changed. So what we'll do then is view this in review. So we'll just go to review, publish a new version to review 360. And so that's going to take those languages, move them up into the translation version of review, and ask, publish a new version. We'll say all languages, publish, and that'll just take a moment. And then what's nice here is that when we look at this and we need to assign a validator maybe to go back in and make that update to go back in and re-review it, they're just going to be directed to those changes that we just made with that block. So let's see what it says here. Excuse me. So we come into German, and notice over here we say validate update. So there's just a couple updates that have been made. That's that block. We'll go back to Spanish. And then we could look at those. So we'll look at whatever changes. So if there's any words changed, we go to look at the next one. And then we should see, yeah, so all the changes right there to the block. So the title, the text, and so on. And so what we'd need to do then is, even though it's been completed, we would say re-request review. And then you could assign to the same person. We could say in the same date and so on. And then when they come back in here, they're only going to be directed to what we just saw right there, which is those 7 updates to validate. So they don't have to go back through the entire course again. They'll just be directed to that specific area for the updates. Now, we haven't assigned any validations here for these other courses. So let's just see what it says, right? So it's telling me to validate those updates, but we'd also need to go through the initial validation process here because none of that has been validated at this point. All right, a couple things left. I want to show you how we can manage the specific languages. So for example, let's say that we wanted to add or replace a language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my stack. I'll just say I get it over here. I just click the dashboard, and let's go back to Rise since that's what we want to edit. And if I wanted to add a language, I could come in here and then say translate. And we've already translated, so there's nothing really else to see here. However, if we came in and wanted to add, say, Korean, go ahead, and then we can go ahead and translate that. It's going to add just the Korean language to our initial languages that we have. So we'll go ahead and just add that second language right there. And it's translating. Now, while it's doing that, let's say we wanted to remove a language, like we no longer needed that language, or maybe the course needed a lot of changes that are different from the others. So we wanted to add more interactive blocks. We want to bring in a code block. We want to do a custom block. Let's say, for example, so there's the Korean now that's been added. But we could, let's say we wanted to remove Japanese, click the little ellipse right here, and we can just archive that language, and that's going to remove it. Or let's say that this course for Japanese had additional changes. Maybe there was extra modules that needed to be added for this particular course, this particular group. What we might want to do probably is do a save as and remove this from the course stack. Yeah, so we lose the benefit of having everything together in a course. But the benefit is that by saving it as, we then can add additional blocks, delete some blocks, right? Things that maybe the course structure or curriculum is different for this particular course. We could do a save as, and I'll just keep copy as and click save. So that course has been duplicated, and I can open that up right here, and I have a separate version of the course. So there's the copy of. And so now this course is like, it's a separate course, and any translations I make in here are going to be unique to this one as opposed to the other, in which case if I did that, then I would come in and say archive, and removing this will remove it from your course, and I can restore it at any time. So there's going to be times when your content's not going to be exactly the same, right? So if the content is the same for the courses, minus the videos and the audio that you're just swapping out for the language specific, and then you keep them all together, and then you make those changes specifically to the media, but essentially the course structure is the same. You just keep them in the stack. But if you need to modify, like we needed to have maybe an extra lesson here, right? Extra, and then we added the content here. We just needed to do that. It's certainly going to happen, and so on. Then we would treat this one separately, and then we would retranslate this course as a separate course and move that through the validation process, and then it's removed from our other course where the content is all going to be shared the same. So just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to use that. I think this happens a little bit sometimes where in Storyline, probably more than Rise, where some customizations are being made for a particular language, and you can use all these triggers and everything. Or even in Rise, right? If you just wanted to add maybe just an extra accordion block just to one course, just save it as, and then archive the other so you have a separate version. Again, the benefit to the way Articulate Localization works is that everything's contained in that one stack of courses. But if you need specific modifications, then it's really a separate course, separate project, in which case then you just want to do a save as and then archive. All right, I saw a couple questions on video and audio, and I might have jumped over that a little bit quick. So let me I want to back up a little bit and show that. But I do want to highlight something that we recently added as well, and hopefully you have already been using this feature, and that's the snapshots. So this essentially, you can save versions of your courses. You can also now save the versions of your multi-language stacks as well. So we could say save a snapshot, and then say updates with new interact accordion or something, right? So you can just give some meaning there. But now you have that extra backup of the files that you can now save for your multi-language courses. This has been available in single Rise courses for some time. I think this is the best feature in the world because I do a lot of edits on Rise courses. I work on Rise a lot, and whenever I make a substantial change to one, I want to do a quick snapshot, just save a snapshot of it so that I have that. Let's do this. What are we going to do? Oh, let's just edit the course. I'm going to go back to edit course and highlight how it works with localizing the video and the audio assets. So we can just probably come in here real quick. I think I have a video. Do I have a video? It'll essentially be the same. But one of the things that you want to make sure you do, let me just see if I have a video to look at. If I don't, we can just work with audio. Just do the audio. Whenever you're working with the audio and video, one of the first things you want to do, I guess I don't have one, is make sure that you add the captions first, because those captions will get translated when you run the initial translation. So for example, let's just add audio here. I'm just going to say AI audio, which is automatically, I'll just insert the block text. That's automatically going to add the captions for us. So that's really nice. But if I didn't automatically add the captions, then I would want to manage the captions for this audio. So I'll say generate speech real quick. And once that finishes, I'm going to insert it. And so I have the audios being inserted. And so in addition to the audio, you can also have the transcript. So there's a transcript that's generated here real quick. And since I'm in English and I added something, I'm going to need to retranslate that. So the caption's been added. You can also edit the caption, or if I didn't have it, I could remove it and then add a new caption. So if you're adding your own audio, then you can just add your own caption file for that. But as long as the caption's there when you run the translation, that's going to get translated with it. It's not going to translate the audio, so you'd want to swap out that audio file in each of the language-specific courses to have that updated audio or video. But the caption file is going to be there. So you'd want to replace the audio for each of the others. So I'd need to come back in and go back to stack, and then I'd need to retranslate. I'd need to update the translations for those languages, and the caption file, not the audio file, but the caption file is going to be updated, and then we'll have that new caption there. So we can see what it looks like here. Should be an insert, and then caption has already been translated. So we'd still need to, for verification and validation purposes, do an update and send that to review, and then the validator will only be notified of that recent update, right? So that's the only update we've made since the previous validation. Well, actually, Spanish was the only one that we had, but they would only be directed to this particular file, and then that's where they can see the specific captions. So that's really easy. And then if you had a Spanish version of the audio, then you would come in, edit the course, and just swap out that audio file, just like we did with the images, so that you want to personalize those for each of the courses. But just to confirm that audio is not going to automatically be playing in Spanish. It'll still be in English, but you would have the caption, and that would be the same for the video. All right, lastly, let's talk a little bit about storyline blocks. Now, I know not everyone uses those in their course. I'm just going to go back to edit. But let's say you want to use a storyline block in your course, and you're adding that. So before you can add it, you need to make sure that the storyline block has been translated. So let me do this. I'm going to come over to storyline, and this is just a storyline file, and I want to translate this one. So I want to insert this into Rise. If I just publish this to review, the normal process, and then I insert it, it's not going to be translated. So I need to make sure that the storyline project is initially translated. So I know this is on Rise, but we'll just do a little storyline. So we go to File, Localization, we'll say Translate. And I'm going to keep it really simple because storyline will take a little bit longer. Let's do Spanish, and we'll do Spain since that we were working on. So again, that's fine, and I'll just say Translate. So that'll just take a moment. It's not too big of a file, so it should go quickly. But what I want to do is translate the storyline file first, and then I'm going to publish that to review, and then from review, then I can grab it, and because just like with Rise, all of the storyline translations are going to be contained within that single file as well. So Rise is a single course project. View project languages, so you can see both of them. I have my Spanish and my storyline, so that's going to translate. I could look at the drop down and see that that's translated as well. Did it translate? Yeah, I guess it's leaving the exercise labels the same. All right, but we should see. I just want to make sure. Let me check the slide layer. So lagging there. Yeah, so everything's changed. All right, so with that, I'm going to then publish this file to review with that translation in there. And then, so Healthy Habits, 2 languages, and just 1 slide is fine. Slides viewed, 2 of 2. Hold on, do I have 2 more slides in here? Nope, just have 1 of 1. Not sure why it's saying that. Okay, I'm just going to go through it again. I'll publish it, back to review. Once this is published to review, then I can grab that and insert this into my Rise course, and then when I run the translations, it'll pull in the appropriate language translation. Again, I know not everyone uses storyline blocks. However, I'd say while this is publishing, storyline blocks give you a lot of freedom for adding additional interactivity to your Rise courses. You don't need everything converted to a storyline block, but if you wanted to put a special custom interaction into your course, storyline blocks are the way to go. We'll give this a second, and it should finish uploading. And then again, it's going to work just like with Rise. The storyline is more of a slide-based layout, so it's going to have a different aspect ratio than the page lesson that Rise has. So I can view either one. I can view the English or the Spanish, but this is storyline. So basically, I had to translate my storyline file first to get into the languages, to get them inserted, right? And there's my translation. Everything looks the same right here. All right, cool. So I'll come back in here. I want to make sure I'm in my source language, and let's just add that storyline block. So all of a sudden, interactive. There we go. We have so many new blocks now. All right, storyline. and now I can browse review for the specific file. So right now I'm in English, so I would select the English, right? That'll be the English version, and then I should have turned off the menu. Then I would come into Spanish, and I'm going to replace this content with the Spanish, because right now we're in English. So I just come into content and then say change, and then there's my Spanish version. Select, and then you can see as once we get this in there, a little magnifying, it's all translated. So that's the process for working with the blocks. Now, if you come down and I see that, for Hebrew and German, I haven't changed them yet, so I need to make sure to translate that file into each of those languages so I can swap those out. But again, it's just to save time with the way Storyline takes a little bit longer to publish, because they're coming from my desktop to online. So just know that you need to translate it first, and then you can insert it, and then you swap out each of those blocks. All right, folks, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this session. Just thing to remember real quick is we will get the recording out to you tomorrow. So the session's being processed. We'll get that out. If you have any questions, and I know there were some additional questions. Sorry, dog's in the way. We had some additional questions that we just didn't get to. Please post an ELH in the community. We'll be more than happy to help you. We want to get the answers to your questions. We know you have questions about Articulate Localization, whether it's Rise or Storyline. I even saw some Storyline questions in there. Please just follow up with us there, and we'll be sure to get you the support and the answers that you need. Just remember, tomorrow the email will go out. They'll get the recording. There's a resource page with some links and resources for Articulate Localization. But we'll get that out to you tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to my moderators. I know you all worked so hard on these sessions. It was such a big session, but I appreciate everyone's help doing all that work in the back channel. And again, thank you all so much for joining me for the past 45, 50 minutes or so. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. Take care.